Welcome to Rauta. This video is done in commercial collaboration with our sponsor, Steelfest. What's up, people? It's Rauta time for yet another Underground Trio episode. Because of being cool, let's do it with shades on. Oh, I kid you not, I had a little bit of operation. Alright, well, let's start with the first band in question, and as the thing is, we'll go through worst to best with this video. This is not to say the bands are necessarily bad, but, we'll save the sugar uh, in the bottom of the glass for the last sips. So we'll start with the more less quality ones. And this is of course just my personal opinion. Feel free to disagree because what matters in essence is of course what you think about the music, and this is my opinion only. Now that disclaimer aside, we have three different bands of three different styles for this particular video, and as the case is, these are more or less kind of underground bands. And this time we'll go first to international waters. That being said, mostly Sweden and Germany. That is anyway the case with Amaurot. Amaurot. I don't know how the band itself pronounces the name, and that goes beyond the scope of this video, this review. But this is indeed doom slash gothic metal, and this band has only one album out. They haven't been out since, before 2019, and only singles put out in year 2022. So I guess the safe assumption is they've been practicing and honing and rehearsing and, of course, writing songs for their debut album, which with that they guess they skipped the demo phase, which is, in my opinion, so often a grave mistake for a lot of bands. Now, these people get the pass, the kind of a benefit of doubt thing with that, these are not newbies to the genre, these are newbies to the metal scene. They have been out there for quite some time, and one could say, yeah, what could go wrong when you just skip the demo phase, head on straight to the album phase and let it be done. Now, the basic mistake with that kind of approach is, especially for the newbies making music, is that when you really don't have those demos to just kind of, how to say, hone your thing, polish and remove the dirty parts from the music, you're kind of most likely to end up having those parts with your debut album. And that's in fact a very sorry case with the debut album, To Tread the Ancient Waters. Now, already this album coming with this kind of a title is, okay, this is very much going to be kind of a cliched kind of a thing. And if you take a look at this album cover, are you guys, I don't know, your late teens or whatever? It's not really a horrible one, but I won't be complimenting this one because it's not really a good thing. Now, having an album more than 50 minutes of music, that's no brainer for this kind of stuff. It's after all doom metal, so you're kind of bound to have lengthier songs and kind of a slow tempo, and let the things be built with, just take your time kind of a thing. That's not the problem with this one. But man, this is almost like taking me back to early 90s. When bands like, say, My Dying Bride or early Anathema, they were paving the way with the kind of a doom death kind of a thing. And, well, of course, that meant, they're gonna be followers to kind of a clones or worship bands. Like nowadays, it's kind of a nice way to say, these guys are totally copying the style of this and that black metal band. Now we call them worship bands, where in fact the normal thing would be say they're copycats. They're the clone ones. They don't have their own style, so they're just going with the style here that is kind of bound to do a little bit of a copycat thing. Now, I won't mind that stuff. I don't really care if bands are more like copycats, if they're doing the right way. If they're copying the right elements, doing good production and having good songwriting, good vocals and all that stuff. I don't really care if you lack originality. I don't care if you are 0% originality, if you just copy the right things. world would be a happier place if we just had more good Slayer copies or Bathory copies and etc. Now, Amaurot is trying to copy those bands that, paved the way for doom death metal bands or even with more gothic style. But just to make it you understand, this is more leaning towards a little bit death doom. Not the same way as those bands which are more death with slow tempo, but having those gothic metal elements, but also growly vocals. So when you're thinking about like doom metal, you might be thinking about bands like which are just done with clean vocals, Candlemass and the like. But this is definitely like, okay, we have this female singer, cliche, but not a bad one. We have the growly vocals, kind of also cliche if you really think about it, but not a bad one. If only the execution was right, if only the songwriting was really good, but it's not. And I felt almost like I'm wasting my time with this album because, in fact, it doesn't have any of good songs. It's not like the production is awful, but it's not really that good, right? And those growly vocals, they're more like, yeah, they are definitely, how to say, serving what they're supposed to. It's almost like having your bread and butter, but it's no tasty one. It's more like, yeah, I'm gonna get the, hunger removed and I won't be bitching about it. But is it enough? Everything here is more like it is just filling the holes, but it's not gonna make it sound and look nice. It's almost like a side project kind of a thing, which I guess it and essentially it is because these guys have other projects. So it's like, hey, let's do this kind of a gothic doom metal band because we already are focusing on other more extreme metal genres, and when we do it kind of half-heartedly. It almost feels like these guys are not even trying to make the best of out of it. More like, I have these two metal riffs, I need to get them going, so here they are. Let's just dump it, record it, and get it over with so we can get back to our main bands. So to me, it feels like this is horrible, mediocre album. By horrible, I mean it's not really bad, but I mean this is much like those demo bands, like I don't know, early '90s, which were not there yet. Like I said, when you don't have those demos done, you end up doing exactly those things with your very, very first album. And this is a good example of that. Now, I was a little bit of curious to see what kind of reviews this would have been. And when I was doing this, I was already done with, what my notes with the review and all that stuff. And then I opened Metal Archives only to see this score would be exactly the same what I'm saying. Because my score would be 5.5 out of 10. So very, very mediocre overall. Not really bad one, but not good in any aspects. And the only one review I will see here on Metal Archives is actually exactly that, 55%. So unless you're a hardcore Dead Doom, Gothic Doom person, I don't know, there's a reason for you to check out. And even if you are, expect some C-class execution. Once again, it's not bad, but it's very, very forgettable. Maybe the next album the band will be doing something else. The next band in question, technically speaking, shouldn't be in Underground Trio. This was a minor mistake on my behalf. I tried to include bands with one or two albums max on this album, but every now and then something slips, and this time it's Foreseen from Finland, having their crossover thrash metal being in part of Underground Trio. Then again, it's not really a big thing because this is not a band that is exactly, doing a major label kind of a thing, even though that's not really the justification to include it. But here we are, Foreseen's third album. Curious enough, this was recently featured briefly, however, in one of my monthly streams because someone was asking like, hey, Jerry, what's up? Why is that Foreseen is the best Finnish trash band or something like that? And I was like, I don't know about that, but here we are doing the review for that. And previously I haven't really been listening to the band properly. I mean, I've been knowing the band by name for a long time, but it's not like I have reviewed the previous album. So here we are with Untamed Force, the year 2022 release, and this band has been here for more than 10 years already, so not exactly newbies anymore. And what you have here in essence is kind of a textbook example of how to do crossover trash. And by no means that's an insult, more like pointing out that these guys are definitely kind of nodding to hardcore and punk and at the same time doing metal. So what you have here is a rather simplistic take on thrash metal. They have the energy, they have the passion, and they have everything you kind of need to do finished version of, in a way, Suicidal Tendencies early days. But the downside of thing here is they don't really have those killer riffs. And that's part of the reason why I'm not a big fan of early days of Suicidal Tendencies, even though the mid era is just fantastic. Now the thing here is, these guys have indeed the energy, the passion, the kind of a punkish, hardcore-ish, trashier, I don't know, attitude what you are kind of supposed to have here. But unlike bands which are really deep into, more violent and aggressive trash metal, or more like thinking man's trash, like we could say about early Metallica with the takes and more complicated songwriting and all that stuff, Untamed Force is more like, let's not worry so much about the details. Let's not worry so much about complicated songwriting or complex riffs and all that stuff. It's done with force and attitude. I don't know if it's more about skateboarding mentality or just kind of a hardcore attitude, but something tells me like this could have been more polished. Like more technique with the punches rather than just punching the shit out of people here. And while I have no problem with being kind of aggressive and straightforward and all that stuff without giving a damn about technical gimmicks and all that shit, I think Untamed Force is a little bit a missed opportunity. A missed in the sense that these songs could have more, say, powerful impact, more kind of a cutting edge. Now it's more like blunt instruments used in sheer violence and all that stuff. Or like the skateboarding thing, let's just go with the roll. Let's not do complicated tricks, but just always and, perfect grinding and simple stuff. Now, the guys have the mentality that's right nice for the album. They have the kind of a passion and all that stuff. But when it comes to songwriting, nothing here sticks like the hit song stuff. And I do really mean that. A lot of trash metal albums really have those. Even those crossover things. I mean, just listen to some Municipal Waste or, like I said, early Suicidal Tendencies, and you have those kind of songs like I Saw Your Mommy or Institutionalized. Now, Foreseen is not exactly there. So it's more like having the right tools, but just ignoring the use of some of them. So I kind of like them, and I like they have the energy, but I think the execution could be a lot better. So maybe more impactful riffs here and there, better songwriting overall would do the trick, and it really wouldn't hurt if the production was like fierce and just I don't know sharper, kind of a giving more edge to it. So kind of nice, but no cigar just yet. And then we go to the best of the pile with this one, and this one is Sweden. Now there's not much originality with this band called Eldprov, and I mean it's Trial by Fire or something like that. And this one is the debut album called Rift, released through Grind to Death Records. They have always been supporting the channel with their albums, and they have indeed put out some interesting ones out and some more lukewarmish thing. These were falls between those extremities. Well, not extremities, but you know what I mean. And this one is indeed kind of a combination of black trash and death. It kind of have all these instruments, elements, and then doing it a very, very Swedish take of, how to incorporate melodies into that kind of stuff. So it's not purely death, it's not purely black metal, and most certainly not purely trash, but having all those ideas incorporated into one. I mean, this is what I would have been saying and have said for years about, for example, Destroyer 666, and yet at the same time, these bands don't sound like the same. It's like one is from Australia and one is from Sweden. But technically speaking, when we're talking about genres, they both have the kind of a similar, not same, but similar kind of a blend when it comes to, to doing the music. They have all these, like, I'm gonna use that kind of stuff and that kind of stuff. So it's more like cherry picking a little bit. Not cherry picking, but you know what I'm talking about. So there's energy, there's melodies, there's certain like elements of heaviness or darkness, kind of a blackness, if you will, and that's what makes Eldprov an interesting thing. Now, given that this is first album, I think there's a lot of improvement for the band, and that will be there coming later years with more albums coming out. But already this is a really, really, really nice start for the kind of stuff because it's kind of almost like borderline hitful album. By hitful I mean it's almost like being kind of a catchy, which is not that uncommon for these kind of genres to be used here, but something kind of tells me that these guys could do a little bit better even. So I'm definitely stoked to hear these later on because in my opinion they already have the potential to really nail it. It's more like we have the nail gun, we have the nails. Now we need to just shoot somebody in the head. Oh, shoulder, almost hard. You get the idea. So not exactly Bullseye album just yet, but there's something very, very fascinating being kind of old school and basic and still making an interesting album with interesting melodies and all that stuff. Now, if you'd ask me a week later, but I've been listening to this album and he would say, okay, give me a song. I couldn't name it. And that kind of tells me about like my attention span. Yeah, I get it. But also why none of these songs really kind of drill into your brain. So it's more like I have this all-around understanding what this album is all about, and I have the kind of a feeling why I would like to go back to it, but then at the same time it's like, no, it doesn't really have those songs. The ones that you can probably drop names with your favorite bands and all, be it, bands like Dissection or whatever. We're talking about Swedish melodies here, right? But this is not there yet. However, like I said, this has all the potential, and maybe the next one will be more honed and more focused with the songwriting, writing more and including more killer riffs and maybe even killer songs on the album. So there you have it, the best in the pile from Sweden. Now, off you go, check out some of the bands. You will find links provided in the description box. I hope you like some of them, maybe even all of them, but it's up to you to find that out. So give it a chance to these bands or give it not up to you. And meanwhile, looking for your comments or feedback. Thank you for watching. Take care and bye-bye.